This message finds you now for a purpose. There's a particular phenomenon that behavioral scientists have documented but rarely discuss in mainstream contexts. It occurs when an individual's psychological architecture reaches what researchers call a readiness threshold, the precise moment when their internal systems become capable of processing a completely new level of reality. You're encountering these words today because you've crossed that threshold. The timing isn't arbitrary. Your consciousness has been preparing for this information through a series of seemingly disconnected experiences that have been systematically building your capacity for what's about to unfold. Most people will spend their entire lives operating below this threshold, recycling the same patterns, reinforcing the same limitations, never quite accessing the frequency where genuine transformation becomes possible. But something different has been orchestrating your experience. Consider the mathematical improbability of you being here, reading this specific message at this exact moment in your development. The odds are astronomical unless you factor in the intelligence that guides readiness to meet opportunity. That's what's happening now, a convergence that's been years in the making. You've likely noticed an increasing sense of misalignment between who you are and the structures you've built your life around. Your career feels like wearing clothes that no longer fit. Your relationships operate on outdated agreements. Your goals seem to belong to a previous version of yourself. This isn't dissatisfaction. It's evolution announcing itself. What you're experiencing mirrors the process engineers observe in complex systems before major upgrades. Everything appears to malfunction simultaneously, but what's actually occurring is the systematic deactivation of obsolete protocols to make space for superior ones. Your life is preparing to operate on new software. The ancient Stoics had a term for this: preferred indifference. Circumstances that seem important but are actually neutral in relation to your true purpose. You're beginning to recognize that many of the things you've been pursuing fall into this category. Not because they're inherently wrong, but because they were never aligned with your actual function. Research in developmental psychology shows that breakthrough moments are preceded by what appears to be chaos, but is actually sophisticated reorganization. Your nervous system is recalibrating. Your decision-making processes are upgrading. Your perception is expanding to include data that was previously invisible to you. You've probably started noticing what others might call coincidences appearing with increased frequency. Books containing exactly the information you need materialize at the perfect moment. Conversations overheard in public spaces seem to address your most private concerns. People with specific expertise appear in your life precisely when their knowledge becomes relevant to your questions. This isn't your imagination creating patterns where none exist. This is your enhanced awareness finally perceiving the intricate web of connections that was always present but was filtered out by your previous operating system. When someone reaches readiness threshold, their attention becomes magnetic for relevant information. The difference between those who successfully navigate this transition and those who retreat into familiar territory comes down to one factor: their willingness to trust emerging data over historical evidence. Most people, when they begin perceiving these new patterns, become suspicious of their own perception. They actively seek information that confirms everything is static. They dismiss meaningful connections as wishful thinking. They attribute expanding opportunities to random luck. They convince themselves that the significant people entering their lives are merely coincidental encounters. In doing so, they actively repel the evolutionary leap that's trying to manifest. Here's where I'll briefly acknowledge what's customary at this juncture. If these insights are creating resonance within you, and you sense this exploration should continue developing, the most powerful way to nurture that is through your participation. It's not simply about engagement metrics, but about creating a signal that profound dialogue is occurring here. Because transformation at this level requires a specific type of cognitive flexibility, not the reckless confidence that leads to impulsive decisions, but the mature courage that enables you to act on emerging patterns even when conventional logic argues for more proof. The kind of mental agility that allows you to trust your upgraded intuition over your outdated analysis. Right now, you're in what could be called the synthesis phase. This is where you begin recognizing that all the seemingly random events from your past, the failed projects, dissolved partnerships, missed opportunities, financial challenges, periods of confusion, weren't chaotic at all. They were precisely designed curriculum. Each apparent setback was installing specific capacities you'll need for what's approaching. That business venture that collapsed taught you resilience independent of external approval. That relationship that ended developed your ability to maintain identity during emotional turbulence. That financial crisis forced you to discover resources you didn't know you possessed. That period of professional stagnation was developing your tolerance for uncertainty. That health challenge revealed your capacity for self-advocacy. Every experience that felt like regression was actually advanced preparation, building competencies that couldn't be acquired through theory alone. Consider this: if your path had been linear, if you'd achieved all your original objectives without obstruction, would you possess the complexity, the depth, the nuanced understanding you have now? would you be capable of managing what's about to integrate into your reality? Almost certainly not. You had to become precisely who you are now to be compatible with what you're about to receive. And what's approaching isn't simply an improvement to your current situation. It's a complete overhaul of how you interface with existence itself. A fundamental shift from operating through limitation to operating through potential. You'll begin navigating from clarity rather than hope. You'll stop seeking permission before expressing your authentic capabilities. You'll attract collaborations and circumstances that match your genuine frequency instead of accepting what's merely available. You'll create from inspiration rather than desperation. But understand this: the transition won't be frictionless. Authentic evolution never is. You'll need to deactivate versions of your identity that feel comfortable but are now obsolete. You'll have to disconnect from networks that can't support your new trajectory. You'll need to exit environments that were appropriate for who you were but are incompatible with who you're becoming. This is the crucial point where many individuals approach the threshold of their new reality only to retreat toward the predictable. Because releasing the old feels like loss, even when what you're releasing was never truly yours. Even when what you're abandoning has been subtly draining your resources for years, you'll encounter moments in the coming period where you question everything, where you'll wonder if you're making a catastrophic error by trusting this internal shift, where you'll observe others who appear content with their stable realities and consider if you should simply accept your current circumstances instead of pursuing something you cannot yet fully articulate. These moments of doubt aren't evidence that you're on the wrong path. They're confirmation that you're on the correct one. Because uncertainty only emerges when you're moving toward something that has genuine significance. When you're about to integrate a reality that's authentically transformative. When you're embodying a version of yourself that challenges the part of your psyche that's been in control. Here's something that might surprise you. The aspect of yourself that's been creating resistance, that's been enforcing limitations, that's been generating reasons you should remain unchanged. It's not your enemy. It's been attempting to ensure survival using the only strategies it knows. It determined early in your development that being too distinctive was dangerous, that high visibility invited criticism, that ambitious goals led to painful disappointments. So, it constructed protective barriers around your true potential. It created stories about why you weren't qualified, why you needed more credentials, why you should wait for better circumstances. It convinced you that your most expansive visions were unrealistic, that your deepest motivations were inappropriate, that your authentic self was somehow miscalibrated for the world. But what this protective system fails to recognize is that you're no longer the person who required those defenses. You've developed greater resilience, enhanced awareness, increased capability than the younger self who needed that protection. The same barriers that once provided safety are now causing systematic stagnation. The transformation underway isn't just about reaching external milestones. It's about finally interfacing with yourself without the legacy programming. It's about discovering that the person you've been suppressing is exactly who the world needs to encounter. You'll begin observing that interactions have different quality when you communicate from your authentic center. That resources appear when you stop forcing and start allowing. That others engage with you more genuinely when you stop requiring their approval and start trusting your own judgment. That existence becomes more fluid, not because obstacles disappear, but because you're finally utilizing your inherent strengths instead of compensating for perceived deficiencies. But here's what you must understand about inherent strengths. Most people spend decades trying to excel at things that aren't aligned with their natural architecture. They choose careers based on family expectations, social prestige, or apparent security. They develop skills that look impressive but feel internally dissonant. Your emerging shift will require you to finally validate what you've always intuitively excelled at. Those interests you dismissed as trivial. Those subjects that energize you despite lacking conventional status. Those modes of contribution that feel effortless to you but appear complex to others. What if the things that come naturally aren't weaknesses or signs of inadequacy? What if they're actually your core competencies? What if certain activities invigorate you while others drain you because you're finally making contact with your primary function? The timing of this recognition isn't coincidental. You couldn't have perceived this clearly years ago because you needed that time to develop the self-trust to value your natural talents. You needed to attempt conventional approaches to fully appreciate the power of your unique one. You needed to experience misalignment to recognize alignment when you discover it. Everything is about to accelerate now. Not in a frantic, overwhelming manner, but in a way that feels like you're finally moving with a powerful current instead of swimming against it. Decisions that once required extensive deliberation will become immediately clear. Collaborators who resonate with your new direction will appear as if summoned. The resources you require will become available precisely when they're needed. This isn't supernatural, though its effects may feel so. This is what happens when a person stops resisting their own design and begins collaborating with it. When they stop forcing themselves into roles they weren't built for and start creating roles that are perfect fits. You'll look back at this period and recognize it as the inflection point, the moment your reality shifted from something that happens to you to something expressed through you. When you transitioned from being a character in your story to being its author. When you stopped managing circumstances and began designing them. So if you're here, if this information resonates more powerfully than it might have months ago, if some part of your awareness has been confirming these concepts, then you're already perceiving what's becoming visible. This isn't random content you encountered by chance. This is validation of what you've been sensing, but perhaps lacked language to describe. You're standing on new ground now. Everything you've experienced, every failure that didn't define you, every setback that made you stronger, every moment you chose persistence when convention suggested surrender, it was all converging on this point, this readiness, this capacity. The signals are undeniable now. The meaningful patterns, the emerging possibilities, the people arriving at optimal moments, that's not happenstance. That's your reality recalibrating to the new instructions you're broadcasting. That's the universe finally processing the requests you've been transmitting. Your transformation isn't happening because you've earned it, or because external conditions have aligned perfectly. It's happening because you've finally become the person who can sustain it. You've built the internal infrastructure, the sophisticated perspective, and the resilience to manage what you've been requesting without creating systematic overload. The only remaining variable is whether you'll trust the information you're receiving. Whether you'll act on that profound knowing even when you can't logically prove it to others. Whether you'll step into the new paradigm opening before you instead of reverting to the familiar. Your moment is now. Not when you feel more qualified. Not when conditions appear ideal. Not when you have all variables calculated. Right now. Because transformative people don't wait for perfect circumstances. They create perfect circumstances by deciding to move. And in conclusion, let me offer a small exercise. If you've reached this point and something has shifted within you, solidify that transformation. Write in the comments, I am ready for what's emerging. Let this be more than words. Let it be your declaration, the moment you stepped into your new trajectory. Everything is about to be reconfigured, and you're finally prepared for it.